You know, I hope that Disgraced can find an audience so moved or troubled or confused by what they saw that they cannot forget once they leave the theater, and that the trouble that the play has released into them is something that causes them to keep asking the question of what's wrong.
The way I got to know Ayad and his work, in February of 2012, I got a phone call late one night from my mother, who had just left the theater after the performance. She didn't walk out. She had attended an early performance of Disgraced, an American theater company in Chicago where the play got its premiere. And she said, if you haven't heard of this writer, you have to remedy that immediately. And I feel like this is the story of 2012 for you. You came seemingly out of nowhere. Your first novel, American Dervish, published January 9th, went on to be named Best Book of 2012 by numerous publications, including, not insignificantly, Oprah Magazine. We know what power she wields. But that same month, Disgraced premieres an American theater company. Scarcely a month later, your second play, The Invisible Hand, premieres at the Repertory Theater in St. Louis. Seth Gordon in the house. Disgraced moves to Lincoln Center Theater 3. It's scheduled for production in London, which has since opened. And then, of course, the Pulitzer Prize. You know, Teresa said something yesterday, a simile that I want to take. It's like you had sprung fully formed from the head of Zeus.
What's that like for you?
What?
Security at airports. No, I mean, you hear stories.
I wouldn't know. I cut right to the chase.
He volunteers himself. Walks right up to the agents and offers himself up.
What, to be searched?
I know they're looking at me, so I figure why not make it easier for everyone involved?
Those agents are working hard not to discriminate, and then here's this guy who walks right up to them and calls them out on it. It's
pure, unmitigated, passive aggression.
If everyone was so forthcoming, the world would be a very different place.
It's racial profiling.
Honey, I know what it is.
Oh my goodness, that was a clip from the Pulitzer Prize winning play Disgraced. And joining us now on set, playwright Ayad Akhtar. Very good to have you on board this morning.
Thank you.
This looks amazing, and it's art lifted from your life to an extent. I'm going to read a line here. You're naive and well-meaning, and you're on a collision course with history. That is a line that was actually said in your home. Part of the inspiration? Explain the background.
You know, it's always difficult to sort of account for where something comes from as an artist. I've always thought that a really good dramatic idea is the sort of meeting point of three or four ideas. And one of the things that fed the inspiration for Disgraced was a dinner party at my house in 2006, where a simple conversation about Islam and the world sort of shifted people's relationships in subtle ways. And that planted a seed. It becomes, you know, a little bit less subtle in the play because you have to tell a good story that people stay engaged with. But that was one of the inspirations.
You know, I'm not sure exactly what the moment of realization was, but it was sometime in my early 30s that I started to sense that I was avoiding something. I was avoiding something about where I came from, about who I was. It was something I was avoiding in my work, but I was also avoiding it as at the level of identity. And you know, I guess I had been doing this thing, writing long enough that maybe that's why the thing constellated itself the way it did, which was that I think, had enough presence of mind to realize that the best way to respond to this growing awareness was just to be still about it and to see what happened. And at some point, I, metaphorically speaking, sort of just started to turn to look over my shoulder at what I was running from. And in that moment, again, metaphorically speaking, there was this burst of creativity. I mean, it was an explosion. And so the matter of working through personal psychological identity issues or whatever, what have you, actually happened through the work or with the work. And American Dervish came from, you know, that moment. Disgraced did. The Who and the What did, a novel I'm working on now, a film that I'm writing now as well. So all of that stuff came from that encounter.
So when you metaphorically slowed down to allow whatever was chasing you to catch up, and you were rushed with these flood of stories, you wrote Disgraced first.
Yeah.
What was it about Disgraced that made it the most urgent story to tell?
Amir is this character, this corporate lawyer, who's at the center of the play, and it began with a monologue of his, and it was so insistent, and he seemed to embody so many of, I joke about the play, its concussive 90-minute sort of impact belies a very complex architecture in terms of metaphor or meaning architecture, and it's taken me a long time to understand the play. And I've been writing it. It took me 2 years to understand what in God's name this was really about. Because I think Amir was such a strong voice and such a strong, insistent voice that I just kept having to follow him into these places that I couldn't make sense of.
Just before opening night last week on Broadway, I asked him what he was after in writing the play.
There was a character who was speaking to me with this kind of relentless passion, Amir, the lead character in the play, who has this very particular point of view on Islam. He's a Muslim birth and origin, but has sort of strongly moved away from it and is very critical of Islam. But I came to understand that what the play was really trying to get at was the way in which we secretly continue to hold on to our tribal identities, our identities of birth, of education, despite our, despite getting more enlightened.
I mean, there's almost a suggestion that whatever we do, our education or our jobs or our marriages, we never get past this kind of tribal allegiances.
I did not seem to be able to pull the play away from that conclusion. I tried, but these characters continued to find meaning and find some kind of safety as the dramatic situation devolved in those tribal identities.
Now, the next terrorist attack is coming from someone who kind of, sort of looks like me.
See, I totally disagree. The next attack is coming from some white guy who's got a gun he shouldn't have.
Pointing it at someone who kind of, sort of looks like me.
Not necessarily.
So if every person of Middle Eastern descent suddenly started doing what you're doing,
if
we all got used to that kind of compliance, I think we actually might start getting a little too comfortable about our suspicions.
Ah, so you do have suspicions. Look, Stephen and Ward got ahead back in the day underpricing the competition when they got started.
Well, downtown Wasps didn't want to be doing mergers and acquisitions.
Right, so Jews were doing it, and then mergers and acquisitions became all the rage, and guys like Stephen and Mort became the establishment. We are the new Jews.
Jews reacted to the situation differently. Well, look at the Talmud. They looked at it from 100 different angles, trying to negotiate with it, make it easier, more livable.
Find new ways to complain about it.
Well, whatever they do, it's not what Muslims do. Muslims don't think about it, they submit. That's what Islam means, by the way, submission.
Well, I know what it means. Look, the problem isn't Islam, it's Islamofascism.
Guys, salad?
I wouldn't have even known you were Muslim if it wasn't for the article in the Times.
I'm not Muslim, I'm an apostate, which means I've renounced
I know what the
faith.
word apostate means.
I don't blame the French.
The French?
For their problem with Islam.
You're okay with them banning the veil?
You do have to draw the line somewhere.
They're trying to recreate the world in the image of the Quran.
Honey, I think we get it.
Actually, I'm pretty sure you don't get it.
You don't like organized religion? Fine. Maybe you have a particular antipathy for the one you were born into? Fine. Well, maybe you feel a little more strongly about it than the rest of us because, whatever, fine. But I am not interested in your absurd and frankly more than a little terrifying generalization.
Isaac!
What?